Space Ghost!
Hi there.
How's it going, David?
Going good. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, seriously, thanks for coming on. Where are you coming from today?
Los Angeles.
Nice.
Hey, I'm in LA too.
Oh, nice. So yes, I'm. It's still bright and relatively early.
Yes.
On our neck of the woods. Where are you?
Culver City.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm up by LACMA by the tar pits. So
Oh, okay. Nice. I used to live not too far from there on like La Brea and Olympic.
yeah, that's very close to me.
Nice.
So yeah, nice. What about you?
So I'm in New York. I'm in the Bronx.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I miss New York. I used to live out there before I moved here. So yeah.
Nice.
And thank you for staying up late for me.
Oh no, it's not
Oh.
late. It's no worries.
Do you have a favorite LA comic book shop?
Comic Bug was kind of my first home. I was out in Redondo with family when I first moved out here, and so they were my local shop. So
Nice.
they've always been really good to me. Golden Apple's great. I just went to Emerald Knights for the first time for a free comic book day, and they were really nice. Pulp Fiction's been really cool. Revenge Hub is great.
I love Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I think those are like usually my Collector's Paradise.
Yes.
They're good folks too. But yeah, I mean, there's a few. Like I was bummed I never really got to Earth 2. I know they're closing.
Yeah.
I did some signings at Meltdown before they closed, and that was a really fun shop
Nice.
back in the day. I'm sure there are more that I haven't even thought of yet, but yeah, usually like Comic Bug and Golden Apple are kind of my go-tos. And Collector's Paradise is now sort of becoming a go-to as well. So yeah, what about you? Where are you shopping?
Mostly because I like literally can walk to Pulp Fiction comics from where I live.
Mhm.
That tends to be.
They're a good group. They're very nice.
Yeah, they're super nice, and they also give like crazy discounts to the point where I'm like, how do you guys turn a profit? Like, you can get a nice haul of books there for pretty cheap.
Yeah, they're a good crew. I like them a lot.
They are a good crew. I like. Shout out to Pulp Fiction Comics if they listen.
I'm kind of jealous. Like you guys are naming so many comic shops, and like I could name like 2 or 3. Like there's Midtown Comics, sure, but like local shop. Like I don't like to go to Midtown if I don't have to. I try to go to the more local shops.
Yeah.
There's Collector Cave, which is in the Bronx. And then there's a place called Squiggy's, which is in New Rochelle, which is outside of the boroughs. But like there's you guys name so many, and I can only just name like 2. Maybe I can't even name like the third. I know there's probably another one somewhere, but
Yeah, I used to Hanley's was my local shop.
JHU,
back in New York. But I think they shut down both locations, right? Or are they just shutting down the one location? I don't remember if they kept their Staten Island location or not. But yes, right by the Empire State Building. That used to be my stomping grounds.
yeah, that was such a nice spot.
That's cool. I never been. So, are you from New York? Or you just lived there before California?
I lived there. I'm from Missouri.
Okay, nice.
Long way from home. But yeah, I went to school outside of Boston, and then I wound up going to grad school in New York, and wound up living there for a few years. And then yeah, picked up sticks and went to the West Coast, and I can't say I regret any of it.
That's how I feel. I'm from New York. I met Anthony in New York, but I moved out
nice.
here 8 years ago, and it's just like I don't feel like moving.
That's about when I moved out here.
Nice.
Yeah, I moved. Yeah, I was out here April of 2016.
I got here January of 2016.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Haven't looked back. Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Nice. Well, we're here. I need to give you a little intro because we're talking for a little while. But
Yeah, let's do it.
what's up, everybody? We're here today with writer David Pepose. You might know him from his Marvel work on Punisher, Savage Avengers, Moon Knight, City of the Dead. But we're here to talk to him about 2 of his brand new series. One from Dynamite Comics called Space Ghost. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Space Ghost. This is such a great book. And then another series of his, that series just started. Another series that just ended, The Devil That Wears My Face from Mad Cave. Another great comic. And I'm excited to talk about both of them with you, David. So welcome to Comics and Chronic. Glad you can make it.
Woo!
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, man, excited to talk about comics with y'all.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, let's start with Space Ghost because that's how this came about.
Sure.
Me and Jake both read it recently and love it.
Yeah.
What a great first
Very
issue. What a great reintroduction of Space Ghost into like my pop culture sphere. I haven't thought about Space Ghost since I was a little kid. So this is awesome to get a good comic with Space. He was like made for comics. After reading this, I'm like, why haven't we seen more of this already?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thought that I had when Dynamite first pitched me on the book was I was aware of Space Ghost. Of course, I grew up watching Coast to Coast, and I had learned about Alex Toth during my first internship in the industry at DC Comics, and I had read Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti's 2005 Space Ghost series, which was kind of like a Batman Begins style retelling of Space Ghost's origin. And so I, with all that information, I was kind of like, yeah, this character feels like he's got all the ingredients of an A-lister. He's got the amazing, iconic Alex Toth design, and he's got these powers that are sort of like Batman meets Superman fighting crime in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
This iconic, the power bands and the Inviso Belt and his Phantom Cruiser and his base on Ghost Planet. And he's got these three sidekicks, Jan and Jace and their pet monkey Blip, which I would imagine was purely like based to just like get kids watching. You have,
for sure, yeah.
A boy sidekick for little boys to climb onto, and you also have a girl sidekick so girls will want to watch this show. And you have a pet monkey because back in the Silver Age, if you put a monkey on anything, it would have an uptick in sales. And you combine all that with just this like very deep bench of iconic villains, Zorak, Brak, Metalis, the Council of Doom, and you've got all the makings of an A-lister. And yet Space Ghost, from his earliest days, those original cartoons were only about 5 minutes a pop. There was very little in the way of like character development. There was no continuity. There was no backstory. You had just about enough time to introduce the villain of the episode, and then throw Space Ghost in the middle of it, and they kind of existed based on vibes, and based on the sheer strength of Alex Toth's designs. So yeah, the fact that like nobody really like dug deep into this universe, that nobody had sort of built kind of like organically, like what does Space Ghost's universe really look like? And moreover, what's his backstory? How did he wind up connecting with his sidekicks? That struck me as a lot of storytelling potential that nobody had tapped. So yeah, when Dynamite approached me, I was like, this is a no-brainer. This feels like exactly the kind of superhero story that I think a lot of people want. That they want stories that are accessible, stories that are character-driven, but stories that have big spectacle, but stories that aren't tied into a million other books. That you can just pick up the one book and get self-contained stories month in and month out. So yeah, I wound up pitching something that was basically the Batman, the Long Halloween meets the Mandalorian.
Nice.
So far, so good. So yeah, I'm very excited to be working on this book.
Fuck yeah, very cool. It's a good combo, Long Halloween and the Mandalorian.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, seriously. I love Long Halloween. Batman's my favorite superhero.
Yeah. Well, I think Space Ghost comes by it honestly. The show debuted in 1966, and it was right on the heels of Adam West's Batman. That show was so wildly popular that everybody was trying to jump on that bandwagon. There was all sorts of shows that were being greenlit, anything that had superheroes involved. And if you couldn't license a superhero on your own, you would make up your own. And that's sort of how Space Ghost came into being. And that's why you see so much shared DNA with Adam West's Batman. Of the Caped Crusader with his precocious sidekick and sort of the bang pow Silver Age camp energy. Yeah. And for me, I was kind of like, well, that's so cool, because looking at Space Ghost's history, every time that Space Ghost reappears, it's always a product of its time. 1966, it's Adam West. 1981, it's Super Friends. It's Spider-Man and his amazing friends. You have Coast to Coast, which is like right up there with like the MTV irony generation with Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill.
True.
You've got Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti, which came out like the summer before Batman Begins. But if I put that book in front of you, you wouldn't know the difference. It's very much in the zeitgeist. So yeah, I said, okay, like let's take all these ingredients, and it's the year 2024. What would that story look like? And so yeah, it really it felt like the kind of story that I couldn't turn down. And it's really been all the fun of a superhero story without any of some of the structural hurdles that might come from a shared universe.
Nice. Do you have a lot of like leeway or creative control as far as like where you want to take the story?
Yeah, so far let's
That's
see.
awesome.
I recently turned in issue 5 like about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And so far I think I've gotten like 2 notes,
Very cool.
pretty minor stuff. I think it was like, hey, can you tweak this one line? And I had floated the idea of whether or not we wanted Jan and Jace to have superhero names, and they were like, no, it's good. I was like, great. Warner Brothers and Dynamite have been amazing partners in all of this, and that they've really let us trust our instincts and really said, like, okay, whatever you think is kind of the biggest, most fun, most character-driven swing, run with it. I do think it helps. I turned in a huge pitch document when I was working on this. I delivered, I think it was over 30 pages of like, this is where I want to take this over the course of a little over a year, and with room to kind of slot in other stories if we want them. And so I think by virtue of being so detail oriented with the pitch, I think Warner Brothers has been very excited to just be like, okay, we know exactly where this story's headed, and there's very little deviation as far as what I outlined to what I've scripted. If anything, once I script it, sometimes there's bits and pieces that go a little deeper, or wind up like having some interesting character interactions with one another. But yeah, they've been wonderful partners. By far the best licensor I've ever worked with, by a mile. It's nice to see notes in the margins where it's just the licensor being like, yeah, that rules. Yeah, that's exciting. Like, yeah, that. Having worked on a lot of licenses, that's not always the case. And so, yeah, it's we've had a lot of latitude, and I think that's helped us really deliver some of our best work.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like a really cool work environment.
Yeah, I want to say like it, and the Space Ghost in your comic, your version of him rang true. Like, even though like I don't want to say like I'm the biggest Space Ghost fan that existed. Like, yes, I can't even say I watched Coast to Coast. I feel like I was a little too young and I kind of missed it. And like when I go back and rewatch it, like I get moments, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm one of the people that didn't like Coast to Coast. I feel like that's sacrilege to say.
What?
So that's just that's as far as I'll go.
I think it's very much a product of its time, and I think there are a lot of hardcore Coast to Coast fans where like that's what they grew up with. But like you said, it's been a while since Coast to Coast was on the air, and I think that's also what makes this a ripe time for reimagining. Is that for me, my target audience is if you only know who Space Ghost is based on the design, you're our target audience. I've been sort of billing this book as like Ultimate Space Ghost.
Nice.
We're bringing them back to a superhero, but this is all new continuity. You don't have to watch anything. You don't have to read anything, any other books, any other runs on the character. All you have to do is pick up issue 1. We've done all the homework for you, but we're really trying to build this as user-friendly as possible. That if you are a diehard fan, there's lots of Easter eggs and fun character beats that you'll be like, oh, I see, like Pepose did his homework. But if you're brand new to this, that's totally fine. This is really just the story of a cosmic vigilante picking up 3 sidekicks and how they kind of change each other's lives. So
that's nice. That's good to know. Like I watched it on Boomerang. So I watched it in between reruns of like Super Friends. So like Space Ghost was always like in the mythos. Like I was like, why isn't he in more things like Batman and Superman are? But this really did feel like the 2024 version of that. Minus like there's no like cheeky humor, which I appreciate. Like it's just it feels like a more serious take. Like even to the point where Blip like is even an acronym, which I thought was great. Like it just all felt organic, you know?
Thank you. That was really kind of the goal. You know, when I was working on this book, when Dynamite made me the offer, and they had said, "Listen, like we'd like to start with a year and see kind of where this takes us," which is an amazingly generous runway. People always ask, like, "Is this book ongoing?" And I'm like, well, giving us 12 issues right off the bat, 12 issues in an annual right off the bat, that's about as ongoing as one gets, unless you're like on a very steady on a steady legacy title, like, you know, like Amazing Spider-Man or Captain America or something. And even then, you know, those aren't permanent either. So yeah, you know, I watched every episode to kind of
Oh, hell yeah.
Nice.
I watched all the original 60s run. I watched all of the 80s revival. I took detailed notes in every episode.
Did you rewatch Coast to Coast also?
I didn't. You know, that would have been a huge undertaking to rewatch all of Coast to Coast. I did not have it in me to rewatch 11 seasons of extremely topical humor. But I think that kind of goes into what I was saying, is that like every time you see Space Ghost reappear, it is a product of its time. But the bones are always there. The bones are consistent. It's all about like these characters are iconic, and there's something classic and timeless about all of it. And that's where I really am so excited to be working on this character, because if you're looking at a character like, say, Spider-Man, you know, like there are hundreds of writers who have, you know, been involved in something Spider-Man related, myself included, at this point. Whereas Space Ghost, writing, you know, I think, you know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm like the 5th or 6th American writer to do a Space Ghost comic.
Insane.
I didn't even know.
You know, that's wild.
You're the first Space Ghost writer I've ever read, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think once this series is wrapped, I'll probably be the senior most Space Ghost writer, which is like weird. So yeah, I think this is a character and a property that was just like ripe for reimagining. This was like the perfect time for it, because yeah, like you're able to take like all the fun stuff from all these different plates. It's an all you can eat buffet of like cool comic book stuff that we all kind of pile onto one thing. So yeah, it's been really freeing and really fun to sort of figure out how all these pieces fit together. You know, how do we make them fit in an organic universe? And the way that I've gone about saying it is that it's all about scale. You know, Batman has Gotham City, and Gotham City is like a cesspool. But Space Ghost has like a whole wide universe to cover.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the spirit of it, is that the sheer scale of the universe, it's a big place. And so the Galactic Patrol can't be everywhere. And that's where Space Ghost kind of jumps in where he can to fill in the gaps. And that gives us like a nice organic way to populate it with all those classic iconic villains, where you can say, okay, like it's not random that like, it doesn't feel random that, oh, he's confronting Brak in this issue, or he's fighting Zorak. It's just that they happen to be where the action is in this pocket of the universe. So it's been nice to kind of populate each of these characters and give them their own archetypes and give them their own unique wrinkles and spins. To really kind of make them, to play up those qualities from the original cartoon, but to add even more depth to them. Yeah.
Yeah, Brak definitely felt true to every Brak I've seen, even like the funnier one. It just I don't know why, but in this first issue, I felt like there were some of him in there. Yeah, just like the way he was kind of bullying a bunch of kids. Like it just felt like that's what the newer Brak would do. Yeah,
you know, when I was writing Brak and Sisto, and I can spoil this because the issue's been out for a few weeks. Yeah, when I was approaching this series, you know, Jan and Jace are kind of our point of view characters in the same way that Kitty Pryde was the point of view character for X-Men when she first debuted. And so they're very much the focal point of our whole series. It's very much an ensemble piece. It's very much about Space Ghost dynamic with Jan and Jason Blip and how it evolves and changes over the course of our run. So I thought with having these two kids, these two siblings, these two orphans as our POV characters, I thought having the only Space Ghost villain that has a sibling was like, there was a no-brainer to start off with Brak and his brother Sisto. And so, yeah, it was really fun writing them. I kind of based their voices a little bit off of Boyd Holbrook from Logan. Kind of giving him a little bit of a drawl.
Nice. Okay.
Something like very blue collar, but like a little sinister. That was the thing that stood out to me about Brak in the original series, was that he's not out there looking to conquer the universe. He's not out there looking to like commit genocide or like take over the galaxy or, overthrow a government. He's very blue collar in his aspirations. He's looking to knock over a gold freighter, like for the money. And so I thought, how could we play up that opportunistic streak and also justify why Space Ghost is taking these kids into his care rather than just dumping them off at the nearest police station? So we recast Brak and Sisto as corrupt cops. And so that was kind of like my way of having my cake and eating it too, where we could kind of like sneak in these iconic villains and actually like have a nice surprise. But also, just pragmatically, like just to justify the rest of our story moving forward.
I liked how Brak was also drawn. He looked very feline-ish.
Yeah, Jonathan Lau, that's all him. He did a
that.
really fun job reinterpreting Brak and Sisto for that series. And it's funny because that was some of the earliest art that we had for the whole series. I want to say it was that reveal of Brak and Sisto, and then Space Ghost like crashing into the ceiling. Those were Jonathan's very first pages in the book.
Nice.
I think he did an amazing job with all of that. Seeing the way that he's interpreted these villains, and I've seen a number of them at this point, and he's working. I think he's about to start working another fun villain shortly. It's been really nice in the way that like you can still recognize these characters, but Jonathan's still making them his own. And I know when we were talking about Brak and Sisto, like something that we talked about was like the way that like baboons have like markings on their faces. So rather than making it just a mask, especially because we have them wearing it. Helmets in the book to conceal their identity at first.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do mask on mask. Jonathan, I think, did a really kind of had a nice, elegant workaround with it, kind of leaning into sort of that feline, the fangs of it all. I think he did a really cool job with those characters. But stay tuned because the way that he's tackled a lot of these characters. From the energy monster to Black Widow, or as we're calling her, the Widow, Zorak. There's been a little bit of Metalis that I've seen. It's really sensational stuff.
Very cool. I'm excited, honestly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those designs. So you said you did a deep dive on Space Ghost.
Yeah.
Did you come across, like in all the episodes you watched, is there like what's the craziest piece of Space Ghost lore or something that you were just like, really? Space Ghost? That was...
Well, let's see. There were a few things that I really liked. There was the Space Sargasso that I really liked. It's just basically like this floating spaceship graveyard that I thought was really neat. But also sometimes there's this like wild stuff where it's just like he fell into the mists of death, or like, here's a bunch of space piranhas. Like sometimes they had to, you could tell, we got to wrap this up like real fast. They're definitely, they certainly love their like big headed characters. What was it? Source. There was the sorcerer, there was the wizard, there was the sorceress. I would get the sorcerer and the wizard mixed up. So it was one of those two. Let's see. What were some other wild episodes? Anything with Creature King? Creature King is. I love Creature King.
I don't even know these characters, and
Creature King is like he's like if the Mole Man had like the head of one of the Martians from Mars Attacks. Like he's got a giant noggin and he's a little dude, and he's got control over this like menagerie of space beasts. He's very cool. I'm going to be writing him, not this script, but the next script.
Nice. So
he's fun. Let's see. I've got a real soft spot for Metalis. I wouldn't say he's like crazy, but he's probably one of my favorite Space Ghost villains. Just because like he's the one that I think could like stand toe to toe with Space Ghost, despite his array of amazing powers. Zorak, of course, is super fun, and I had a lot of fun working on him. The Widow, surprisingly, I had a lot of fun with. We kind of took a little bit of a different take on her, but I really liked what we did. The 80s revival, I think, had some weirder concepts, but still, I think just as cool. They had I think it was in the 80s revival. King Remora of the Space Sharks. I think that was in the 80s revival. I'll have to check. The Space Sharks in general, love everything about them. Like it's literally just a big shark dude with like a king robe. Glass Tour. I love Glass Tour. Not to be confused with Glass Door, where you complain about your job. But Glass Tour is kind of like a glass version of Megatron.
What?
Ooh.
Okay.
He's the king of like a glass kingdom, which I believe is also called Glass Tour. So that I like them a lot, and we will be seeing little cameos of both of them in future issues. So yeah, there's a lot. There are a few things that like I wish that I could fit in, and if we get more issues, if Dynamite or Warner Brothers says we want more, I will be definitely throwing them in. There was, let's see, what was his name? Well, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it because if we get those issues, then I'll say that I planned it the whole time. There's definitely been some really fun stuff with Space Ghost, and I think my favorite part about the character is that he's able to kind of cover so much ground organically. It never feels out of place, and in many regards, it's sort of like, you know, there's Batman who, like, yeah, he's teamed up with the Justice League, but like, if you don't have him in the Justice League, he's very, I think, firmly a street level character.
Yeah.
You know, the more you try to elevate it out of that, I think, like, you know, the most you can go for superpowers are like somebody like Clayface or Poison Ivy or like Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, I think, pretty grounded. Space Ghost, you don't have to worry about any of that. You can go wild as you want. You can go as kind of down to earth as you want. You can draw from a variety of different like influences and genres. You know, there are times where I'm like, I want to write a heist issue. All right, I did that. Like, or
Hell
you know, do something a little horror tinged. Great, that's that. You know, I'll do that. And,
oh, nice.
I want to like a big superhero blockbuster. It all fits under the same umbrella. And that is really freeing for me as a writer who can sometimes get a little restless. Being able to kind of like jump between different things really kind of keeps the series fresh for me. And I think makes it really exciting every time I turn in a new script.
Nice. Do you have like, I don't know, like an outline or an idea of like where this arc is going to go and end? Or
oh yeah, yeah. No, I when I turned in my pitch, it had like a pretty detailed roadmap for 12 issues in an annual, with room to slot in more if we want them. So yeah, no, I think with the exception of like one action sequence that I still kind of, I think I can do a better job at it towards nearer towards the end. We're pretty locked in for this series, pretty much from beginning to end. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, we've got a big detailed plan. Every issue kind of has its own unique high concept to it. We're doing a lot of done in one stories. You know, with rare exception, with, you know, the occasional two-parter, you know, or maybe like a three-parter down the line. Every issue is kind of its own animal, which is kind of nice. It's its own flavor.
I like that.
Kinda, yeah, we're not going to be like deviating wildly from you know, our initial tone, but we do, like, you know, everything's kind of got its own flavor to really make each issue stand apart.
And not that the show, like each episode was so wildly different in tone or anything, but you could always jump into a random episode. I mean, that's how it was when you were younger. Like, you didn't have the exact canon of Space Ghost. And I want to ask this, and if it's a spoiler, please, you don't have to answer it. Are you planning to tackle his origin at all? Like, does he even have an origin, or is that something you get to make up?
Yeah. So, you know, watching the original show, there was no origin. There was no backstory. Very little continuity. Basically, almost every episode kind of stood on its own 2 feet, with the exception of like, you would see a couple of villains show up, you know, a couple of times. And then there's sort of like no backstory, no continuity. And then like the 60s run ends with this like 6-part extravaganza that's introduces the Council of Doom. That those episodes are all connected. And watching all of the episodes, that like kind of, you know, suddenly everything ramps up into high gear for like the finale. So for me, Space Ghost does have an origin, and but we're not going to belabor it. You know, and I think the reason why I didn't want to do that is the Joe Kelly run, that was basically a full standalone origin for Space Ghost, which is a different continuity. We're not drawing from that. But I felt like rereading that book, I was like, somebody's already told that story. That's not
Gotcha.
something that I want to. I don't want to try to fight somebody on their own turf 20 years late.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like Space Ghost's origin, really, you can boil it down pretty simply. And so by the time you finish issue 2, you'll kind of know everything you need to know for the most part. And there'll be a few breadcrumbs that we drop as the series progresses, but he's the sole survivor of his planet that was attacked by space pirates, and that's the thing that's kind of put him on this path to fighting space pirates today. So yeah, I mean, we covered just about all the ground we need to in about 3 pages, and if you pick up issue 2, you will be about as up to speed as you need to be. But we do want to keep Space Ghost a little bit mysterious. I'm more interested in sort of who he is now. Which is a guy who has been by himself all this time. He's been alone on Ghost Planet. He's been fighting space pirates. He, just by virtue of like his name and the fact that he wears a mask all the time, he's the guy who's like really, he's a man who's playing at being a monster. He's really pushed that humanity like way, way down. And that's, I think, a lot of the friction between him and Jan and Jace is that Jan and Jace, that's not who they are. They are kids, they're resilient, but also they have each other. And they have Blip. And so I think there is a degree of hope that they have that Space Ghost thinks he's lost. He's been marinating in his tragedy for a very long time. But having these kids there kind of forces him to come out of his shell, perhaps unwillingly. And so there's a nice degree of tension between Space Ghost and his sidekicks that I describe as like Dr. Grant with Lex and Tim in Jurassic Park.
Nice. Okay.
Where Grant is very good at his job, but he is not a fan of kids. He does not know how to handle them. When he is sort of forced to have these kids under his care, he's in way over his head. And that's very much like Space Ghost. For me, I see Space Ghost as, like we've got all the big fun sci-fi spectacle in the action and villains, but ultimately this is a found family story. This is the story of Space Ghost as like the ultimate single dad. He has to kind of learn both how, to reclaim that humanity that he pushed down, but also he learns the challenge of like, when you have kids, it's like your heart running around on the outside. And, when you're trying to teach them how to defend themselves, which is sort of the reason why he allows them to go into the field with them, that can cause a lot of conflict. That can cause a lot of tension. And so these characters are all going to be kind of the dynamic's going to be evolving on an issue to issue basis. And you'll see Space Ghost like start to trust these kids. And then sometimes there'll be setbacks, and sometimes these kids are going to get knocked on their ass, and then they're going to have to kind of help each other get back up. And I think that's the emotional spine of the whole series. And that's been, I think, the most fun for me. Like writing superhero adventure is super fun, of course, but like writing Jan and Jace just like bickering with one another or like telling off Space Ghost to his face. You'll see a lot of that in issue 2. But I mean, that's the fun for me, is getting to see these characters and watching them kind of like bounce off each other and seeing what kind of sparks can fly.
Did you pull any of that sibling bickering from real life?
Yeah. Yes. I think there is a degree of it being a little autobiographical for me. My younger siblings are triplets, and
oh my god,
I was 10 days shy of my 9th birthday when they were born. And so I kind of feel like the dinosaur, like right when the meteor hit. And so I do think there's like a degree of that, of sort of like, you're by yourself and you're doing your thing. You found your groove, and then suddenly like everything's overwhelming and you are suddenly outnumbered and suddenly you have to be responsible. It's overwhelming, but it also can be very rewarding. And so I think that I do think I've drawn from that for some extent, for sure.
So your triplets were like your siblings who were triplets, almost like your own.
Yeah, my younger siblings. Yeah,
Jan, Jace, and Blip.
Yes. Depends on the week which one is Blip. But yes.
Very cool.
I count everything in threes. So this was certainly a natural fit for me.
Nice, very cool.
Nice. I'm definitely looking forward to checking out the rest of the series. I'm so glad to hear it's at least 12 or 13 issues.
Yeah, and Dynamite's been really wonderful about it, and I know just seeing the way that like retailers and press and the fans have really come and supported this book, that really means a lot to me and to Jonathan and the rest of the creative team. So we've been really kind of like trying to bring our A game to every issue, and I'm very excited with what we've got going so far.
Yeah, it honestly seems like everyone who's read it is loving it. Like everyone in the comic book community I've seen talking about it. Like it seems like we all really you have a home run with this series for real.
Yeah. Thank you. We're trying to be worthy of it, and I can't wait for people to see what we've got coming. I think once you've read issue 2, you'll really get a sense of what we're going for this series, particularly now that all the characters are together. And I think issue 2 is one of my favorite things I've ever written. So I can't wait for everyone to read it.
Wow. So wait, when does issue 2 come out?
Issue 2 comes out. It comes out June 5th. So first Wednesday.
June 5th.
Very close.
Okay. So we're gonna have this episode out way before then. So that'll be cool. So if you're listening, you could go pick that up once it's out. I will be. So there's another series that just ended. I want to switch gears before you were talking about as a writer, maybe you want to jump to different genres, and this definitely feels like something completely different in the best way possible. The Devil That Wears My Face from Mad Cave Studios with art by Alex Cormack. The Exorcist meeting Face Off. Crazy stuff happening in this story. I really like this one. I'm going to avoid spoiling the end because I know Jake didn't finish it, and I know it just ended. And I definitely want people to check it out. Can you tell us a little bit about this and how does your in your real life, in your personal life, does your religious upbringing have any effect on this story?
Yes, but I can't go too deep into it without spoiling the book.
Gotcha. Okay. I know what you mean. Okay.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, what I can say is I wound up writing this book because I wanted to impress my father-in-law. He went to Catholic school growing up, and all the majority of his grandchildren all went to Catholic schools growing up, and he loves exorcism horror movies. Like that's his thing. And so it had been kind of on my like to-do list for some time of like, oh, I would love to do something horror. I would love to do something with demonic possession because I know that hopefully he will like that. So I kind of had that in my back pocket for a while. And I also had, I wanted to write a body swap story because Face Off's one of my favorite movies. And I think it's the kind of concept that has inherent conflict to it. Both because you have to build up these characters as archetypes when you first meet them, and then you have them swap contexts, and then having one of them sort of really enjoying where he's at, and often causing mayhem, and then you have somebody who is desperate to get back to their old life, and they are usually in very dire straits and have to fight their way out. That's really like fun for me. So being able to combine these things was like super fun, and that came from conversations with Mad Cave Studios. Mark Lennon and Chris Fernandez are wonderfully supportive guys. They've really been in my corner since my very first book on Spencer and Locke. And so they approached me. It was New York Comic Con 2 years ago. They said, hey, listen, we're looking to expand. We've got people like Colin Bunn and Steve Orlando. Would you want to join up? And I was like, well, those are guys I respect. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, they're great.
And I think Devil That Wears My Face is, I think, one of the books I'm proudest of in my career. And I think that all comes down to Alex Cormack on the art. Alex is somebody I've wanted to work with for many years. I was turned on to his work at Comics Tribe, a book called Sync. And I loved how just like razor sharp it was, and just like pure like urban horror that like just was really visceral. And luckily I'm buddies with Rich Duick, who has frequently collaborated with Alex, and so Rich introduced us at I think like San Diego Comic-Con, and Alex is just a lovely person, super gracious. And so as we were talking, I was like, hey man, like I got this book at Mad Cave, let me tell you a little bit about it. And Alex was like, yeah, that sounds like way up my alley. He
Nice.
loves like Errol Flynn. He loves, the kind of historical like sword fighting of it all. And boy, did he draw the hell out of that book.
It's beautiful.
Really,
Art is insane.
everything about that book came out exactly as I was hoping it would. I couldn't be happier with how it all came together. And yeah, it's yes. So I'm very excited that the finale came out, just because that, without spoiling too much, that's something that's very near and dear to me. I think without, again, spoiling too much, it's so weird like talking around it.
Sorry.
I don't think I could have written this book without something like that in there, given my upbringing. And it is something that like actually did happen historically. So like I thought like that was like a really fun twist, is just, our lead character, Father Vieri, he's somebody who his faith has been tested, it has been broken. But it's always about like the lies we tell ourselves, or the lies that we've been told, and then like suddenly like the rug gets pulled underneath us, and how do we get back up on our feet knowing what the truth is. And I think that is a theme that I've revisited a lot in my books, Scout's Honor being another one that I did that a lot in. So, but yeah, being able to throw in like the horror and the action and the demonic mythology of it all, that was a lot of fun. Like figuring out like, okay, we know how like demonic possession works and we know how exorcism works, but like what's like a reverse exorcism?
Yeah.
How do we like put together mythology that works for that? So I'm very proud of like how we like established different bits and pieces of it, and how we established the rules of it all, and then how we were able to subvert those rules, but then like go back to like the spirit of those rules. So yeah, a lot of fun on that book.
And some really brutal sequences where like, okay, I love exorcism movies too. I love The Exorcist, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but you do stuff in this book where I'm like, holy shit, like what? That's Alex, is that he understood the assignment. He relished the assignment. There were bits and pieces in there that I was just like, tell me if this is like too much. And Alex was like, no, man. I'm like, we had like a running like decapitation count at one point.
Nice.
And Alex and I would send each other like gifs of like Austin Powers, like talking about like, that's not how you're the head of a major corporation. Yeah, I mean, working with Alex and Justin Birch and Mike Martz and Christina Harrington, I've worked with all of them in various capacities before, with the exception of Alex. But I think this felt like a really good jam band. So I think it's some of the best creator-owned work I've ever done, and seeing the response to the book has been really heartening. And I hope now that like the last issue's out and that the trade's coming out in July, I'm hoping that more and more people will rediscover that book, because yeah, I think it goes toe to toe with any horror book in the market, and I think that all is due to Alex.
Yeah, no, but also just like it's a great story. Like there's tons of exorcism stories, but this still is fresh, and like again, that brutality of it is really like next level. But even like the way like we've seen the devil, in plenty of stories, and here he's just like his own ruthlessness that you're just like, damn, like, okay, I know you're the devil, but calm down a little bit. Like we get it. But like it's not something I see in a lot of comics. Like a comic we love is Philadelphia. That could be super brutal too, but like it's a completely different kind of horror. Like you're doing something here that I think like it doesn't take place in modern times. It's taking place, I think, 17th or 16th century, right?
1740.
And the first issue, what drew me in, it kind of reminded me of the Howling Man, the Twilight Zone episode.
Oh.
A little bit, like right before you meet Legion. Like there was just that moment where he's behind the door. Like I don't know if you're a Twilight Zone fan, but
I haven't seen that episode.
Oh my God. If you watch that episode, like you match those vibes so well. Like I mean this in as a highest compliment, because that's
I'll take any
favorite
comparison
episode.
to Twilight Zone. I'll take it. No, thank you.
It's just like that buildup of like who's behind that door. Like if there's like priests being afraid of him, like there's something going on here, and like you have that vibe, that tone throughout the whole comic that just kept me reading.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I think following these characters, because like Vieri is, he was a very fun character just to kind of explore the mythology of it all, but also to just see a man who is kind of like struggling with his faith and struggling with the truth and sort of struggling with his new set of circumstances. But I think I'd be lying if I didn't say that, like, of course, Legion was the most fun to write. Villains is fun. Especially if you can get like a good villain that feels like it really kind of plays off nicely against the lead. And when you do that, then you can have a villain who like gets all the fun one-liners and gets all like the cool badass moments. And there's a degree of wish fulfillment with writing a villain. Not that like I'm out there wanting to rip people's heads off, but like there's something like refreshing about like we live in a world full of rules. Where, I got to pay my rent. I got to hit my deadlines. I have responsibilities. And villains don't have any of that. Villains do what villains want to do. Villains don't take crap off anybody. They get to kind of like assert themselves in like the biggest, flashiest way possible. And oftentimes until the very end, they don't really get anything in the way of consequences. So that can be very seductive to write, knowing that like, oh, if you acted like this in the real world, you'd get socked in the mouth or thrown in jail. But writing a character that's so unapologetically themselves, even in the case of Legion, where he's sort of struggling to kind of keep the mask on a little bit so he doesn't get immediately outed, he's still very much himself. And that's a very fun kind of character to write.
Very cool.
Yeah, he was great. I want to say more, but it's just going to be spoilers, and I'm really not trying to. I mean, I know the book's out already, but I really think like
you can spoil it for me. I'm still going to read it.
Should we? It's up to you, David. Just because if other people are listening, and
no, feel free.
All right, okay. So there's the part where he has the sword of Judas. I mean, I just feel like that's a great element to have in it. Like
the Iscariot Blade. It was one of those things as I was sort of workshopping without kind of like going too deep into the book. I had to really immediately figure out like, okay, if a demon has taken over a priest's body, how does he not immediately spontaneoly combust when he walks into a church? And so I was like, okay, somebody has to be burning at the side of a cross. And boy, would it be great if our poor priest who got shoved into somebody else's body, he kept that weakness. That like the burning in front of religious iconography is about like, it's about possession, that you're on top of somebody else's soul. It doesn't matter if you're a demon or if you're another human being, like that will make you burn. And so I was thinking like, okay, what's the opposite of like a cross? We need something that's almost like a cursed item, but also something that like we can add a little bit of like fun and flair and action to it. And so, yeah, the idea of like melting Judas's silver and turning it into a blade. That's sick. That was really cool. And that wound up kind of being like
super cool,
the fun little like signature weapon of the whole book. And that once we came up with that, there were lots of twists and turns involving the Iscariot Blade that it took a little while for me to kind of hammer them out. Like I knew the first twist involving it, but the second one kind of came a little late. For the last issue, but as soon as I came up with that, I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. That like nailed the whole thing. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And I'm saying like the Judas sword, the Iscariot Blade, it's such a cool name. Like that's
yeah, it was
badass.
Yeah, it was nice kind of being able to add like little bits and pieces of mythology to it that like still felt like they could be real world, but also, like there were little rules, like things like, talking about like the blood of the damned and how does that interact with things. And yeah, it was, I think the thing that was most interesting to me was kind of getting to learn about the structure of the Catholic Church historically. I read about every single pope because I needed to figure out which pope I wanted to use so I could figure out what year I wanted this to be set in. So I could figure out like the level of technology and the like, and sort of what was going on politically at the time. And so learning about, Pope Clementi, who died in 1740, and he was blind and bedridden, like at the end of his tenure, that was all real. Things like the Curia, kind of learning like, how does that work as sort of like the Vatican's inner circle of like the highest ranked cardinals. I watched a lot of the young pope and the new pope. Kind of like get a sense of some of that like kind of political backroom dealing. which is something that's so interesting and also kind of foreign to me, is that I had no idea, like when you see a group like the Catholic Church, where they're a religious organization, but like there's a degree of politics behind all.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
They are just as much a political organization as they are a religious one. And so being able to like really dig into that like these aren't just clergymen, like these are sort of political figures, and they're kind of jockeying for dominance inside their own circle, and that there are different sorts, there are different cardinals having different jobs. And so some of them are going to be more focused on diplomacy, and some of them are going to be more focused on, taking a harsher stand on things. Yeah, I thought that was like really cool and interesting, and really kind of, I think, like lended itself to the world building in a really fun way.
That's cool, because I was literally just listening to a podcast with comedian Jimmy Carr. Do you know him? Yeah. And he was talking about like the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire, and he was like, I think the Roman Empire just became the Catholic Church, and like Rome fell, yes, but what happened to like all their vast wealth and everything? And he's like, also like, where is Vatican City? And it's in Rome. And so like now that you're saying that, I was like, damn, like did the Roman Empire just become the Catholic Church? Like that's crazy.
I mean, the Catholic Church has some really interesting history to it. There was a pope who was so mad at one of his predecessors that he literally exhumed his body and put it on trial.
Damn, that's crazy.
So I did that. I took a little inspiration for that. There was a little beat in the last issue where we propped up not one but two corpses from earlier on in the series, and brought them back for one last hurrah. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on for that, particularly when they were when the church was sort of embroiled in like greater European politics, particularly like, I think it's like the Spanish Empire and like the English Empire, I think it was. Boy, it has been 2 years since I did all the research on this book. But just seeing, how sometimes they had to kind of like play both sides. Yeah, very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. The church is crazy.
So when does this book come out in trade form?
It comes out July 10th. So you can call your local comic shop, tell them to order it for you, because I will certainly be ordering plenty of copies for myself.
Nice.
Hell yeah. I'll definitely be ordering a copy. We should definitely do an episode, Jake. You gotta finish it. I want to.
Very down.
I kind of want to talk about the ending, but I think I'll just leave it off because it's a huge twist, and I don't know. I just think if we say it, then I don't know. I just don't feel like spoiling it.
It'll spoil it for you. Wait until you finish reading it.
I'm definitely going to. I genuinely, I don't give it up to all the creators, but I really like Space Ghost. I really like the first two issues I read of.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's I'm looking forward to reading your work. Who are you, if you are currently reading?
Boy, no, I'm always reading.
Nice.
Let's see. It's just a matter of kind of locking down everything I am reading. I'm reading obviously Krakoa wrapping up. I think that's really
Nice.
Everything that the X-Men office has been doing has been really, really cool, and I'm excited to see kind of the relaunch from that.
Yeah.
I am. Let's see, what else am I reading? Rat City over at Image, Daredevil. I just read Kill All Immortals, coming out from Dark Horse with Zach Kaplan, really talented guy. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver by Stu Orlando is amazing.
Nice.
I really like the first issue of Blood Hunt. Obviously, Ed McKay's work on Moon Knight is amazing. Ryan North's work on Fantastic Four is fantastic. I took a lot of influence for that on how I structured Space Ghost with a lot of done-in-one stories.
Nice.
Chip Zdarsky on Batman doing some really fun stuff.
For sure.
I just read the Jason Aaron Bizarro story over in Action Comics. That was great.
That was cool, yeah.
Gail Simone and Rainbow Rowell are both doing stuff over there that I'm really excited to read. I just caught up on Local Man. Really like that. I know Tim just got nominated for an Oscar for that morning, so well deserved.
Oh, we love Local Man. Yeah,
literally, 2 days ago, I just bought Local Man.
I mean, the thing I always kick myself when I'm asked this question because I know there's like a million other things that I'm just like gonna completely forget. But yes, every Wednesday I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. So there's a lot of fun stuff out there.
Very cool. Yeah, no, absolutely, that's cool. Hell yeah.
Is there, I saw you post about it today, but I'm assuming this is something that is just something you're working on. It is not the official name or anything. Project Cicada?
Yeah, you'll never guess what it is. Yeah, but I just turned into script that last night. And of course, being me, I already am like, oh, I could change this, that, and the other thing. I'm waiting for my editors to give that a read through. But I, of course, until they finish their read through, I'm going to be like tinkering with it until it has to go to an artist's hands. But yeah, it's very fun. It's a licensed project. If you've liked some of my previous work, it'll make plenty of sense why I'm on this particular project. But yeah, a lot of fun with this project. I can't wait for people to see how it turns out.
Is there anything coming up that you could talk about, either Space Ghost wise or any other new series?
Sure. Well, Space Ghost. Well, you'll see in our next round of solicits, which should be the next week or so, we'll be introducing another very iconic Space Ghost villain for issue 4. So keep your eyes peeled. But yeah, issue 3 is still up for pre-orders, where we have a fun heist on Robocore featuring the iconic villain known as the Widow. She was a lot of fun to write, and sort of seeing whether or not she's going to be friend or foe to Space Ghost and company. It was a lot of fun. We've got that on pre-orders. You can pre-order The Devil That Wears My Face, of course, the trade paperback. The trade paperback for Punisher, my Punisher miniseries with Dave Wachter, will be out on the 29th.
Oh, nice.
Get that from your local comic shop. It's all 4 issues introducing Joe Garrison, the new Punisher of the Marvel Universe. Sort of John Wick meets The Fugitive. Had a lot of fun on that. We'll be having more news soon about the return of the OZ, my Ringo Award-winning Kickstarter series. I just didn't want that book to get cannibalized by Space Ghost and vice versa. So we've been sort of pumping the brakes on when we're going to do the Kickstarter. But artist Ruben Rojas has drawn some amazing work. He's actually almost finished with the whole thing. So giving him the extra time was good. And the whole thing's fully written. So I'm very excited for people to be able to check out our big finale for that series. I'm hoping to have some news relatively soon about another creator-owned series. Yeah, just a lot of irons in the fire right now.
That's awesome.
But I think 2024 Space Ghost is my big swing. But I think by 2025 we're gonna have some even more fun stuff along the horizon.
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well,
we'd like to have you back. Whenever you have something new, please come by. We'll talk about it.
That'd be great. No, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Thank you for taking the time. I'm glad we could work out a day for you to come by.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely looking forward to reading more Space Ghosts. And this Space Ghost made me a fan of your writing, honestly. So I want to check out everything you just mentioned. I'm going to be checking out Punisher.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah,
it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Hi, you're listening to Comics and Chronic, and I'm Jacob H.
I'm Cody Cannon.
And I'm Anthony Iannaccio.
And you can tune in every Thursday to hear new episodes of Comics and Chronic.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Comics and Chronic. That's Comics, the letter N, Chronic.
We'll see you guys next week.
Woo!
Peace.